cut them down.
Can't cut them down. And now
Which is like, why would you do that?
Well,
why would you do that over one of the most important historical sites in human history?
Well, the guy that did it, like, he owns the site, right? And then they find it, and now he's trying to sell it. Or not trying to sell, excuse me. The government comes like 10 years later and tells them that they're going to buy it. And it's just like if the government's going to build a highway, it doesn't matter how much you paid for your home, doesn't matter what you got on your property, they're going to come and look at it, and they have an equation form, and that's all that matters. The swimming pool's not on that form, fucking swimming pool doesn't get paid for. Well, on this farmland, adding olive trees made that an orchard instead of basically arid farmland.
Made it more valuable.
Made it more valuable. But what's funny about this is, like, we talk about the arguments against this stuff and how stupid it is. Okay, Jim points out that these trees are a problem. And since it's Jim, and Jim is fucking public enemy number one to archaeologists, but I'm coming to get you, Jim. It's going to be my spot soon. But anyway, since Jim is fucking hated by these guys, it doesn't matter. There is tons of documentation on the problems with having tree roots above a site, all the way from contamination with different microbes to they use a certain species of snail in Europe to determine certain dates, and tree roots that punch right through that shit and introduce that snail to places it shouldn't be, right? Tree roots will, if they're one of those enclosures at Göbekli Tepe is filled with water or had a well in it, all those roots are screaming down that thing and just blowing it to shit. It's gone. So there's a number of things archaeologists, everything I just told you, that's shit archaeologists say. I learned all that from reading papers about the problem that tree roots can cause to archaeological sites. Because everybody knows they cause, at least all the construction guys know they cause problems with foundations. But they don't care. They'll argue all day, oh, those tree roots aren't so bad, that's a protective, it's not such a big, it's all because Jim mentioned it. Had Flint mentioned it first, they would be all up in arms about taking care of those trees. It's so clearly Red Rover, it's all about teams. It's just stupid at the point where it's reprehensible at times, to be honest with you.
It's just shocking that steps haven't been taken to mitigate that when you consider that this is one of the most important archaeological sites ever. So it threw the monkey wrench into the whole idea that people were capable of building stuff like that only around 6,000 years ago.
Yeah. It blasted that on its ear. Like you were saying earlier, I remember, it drives me nuts because I can't find the clip, but I remember seeing it years ago of Graham talking to somebody and the guy saying, that show me the civilization.
Yeah, that was with Zawi Hawass, and there was another archaeologist, the guy with glasses.
Yeah, that's
and he was
saying it.
Openly dismissive in the most disgusting way. Like, where's the evidence?
Yeah. So then they find it. But back in those days, the standard operating model for humans becoming from hunter-gatherers to civilization was you had to start farming, and then you created a surplus of food. And once you had enough of a surplus of food for long enough, you started to have these ruling classes emerge. You get your astronomers and your priests and your shamans, and all these guys don't want to work. And so pretty soon you get these cities going and shit. But this can only happen when we have a huge surplus of food, because that's obviously just wasted labor. Well, Göbekli Tepe really threw that on its ear because there ain't no goddamn farming right then. There's the beginnings of it. There ain't no surplus of food there. There's no surplus of human created food. You might be finding lots of animal bones and shit, but it wasn't like they grew a bunch of food. So it completely destroyed that entire narrative. And that's the part that, because it's a Graham Hancock site, they're slow to really admit that, but go buy a book from the 90s and read about how humans progressed. And you buy an anthropology book, and you'll see it very clear that they completely had to rewrite shit because of Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah, and it's a weird one too, because they know it was intentionally covered up 11,000 years ago.
That one's wild.
That's wild.
That's one thing that's been pushed back on a lot, but it does look like there's papers published both ways, but it does look like, last I saw, it does look like the consensus is it was buried deliberately.
What's the pushback?
The sides of the hill would collapse into the thing, and so that they would just eventually just kind of push some more of it in there and just leveled it out so they could use the area, because it was a bunch of holes in the ground you couldn't walk your donkeys over or anything. I know it's a little
Seems like a lot of work. There's a lot of areas around it you can walk your donkeys.
yeah.
It's not like the whole area.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Gobekli Tepe, like any of those sites, I don't think I'm well aware. Just like the because Jimmy's involved with it, anything Graham Hancock touches, those guys, they're